The Danbury Drum Corps, as it is now known, was organized in 1927 as the Post-60 American Legion Drum Corps. The Legion home at that time was at the corner of West and William Street, when cars looked like this. Currently, this is what the site looks like. The Corps was formed by the music-minded members of the American Legion for the sole purpose of recreation and to carry on the tradition of military music. Officially and legally, the Corps became the Danbury Drum Corps in 1952. The first appearance of the Corps was on Memorial Day 1927, with 25 members marching. The marching attire and instruments were purchased by the members themselves. In 1930, the Corps raised money for its first uniform, consisting of the white and black doughboy uniform, black boots, and tin hats. In 1932, there was a reorganization, whereby the Corps became Legion-sponsored, but also allowed young men to join that were not Legion members. In 1934, the Constitution and bylaws were voted on and adopted by the Corps. From then until now, modifications and additions have been added or deleted depending on circumstances. During the 30s, rehearsals were held in many different places, both indoors and outdoors around Danbury. The Masonic Temple shown here, the State Armory, the Legion Home, a second-floor hall across from the Hotel Green, Lee's Field, and the Danbury Fairgrounds. During this period, the Corps mainly turned out on the street. However, in 1939, it entered its first competition in Middletown, New York, and walked off with 5 first-place prizes. John Hill, who was one of the first charter members, served as president from 1937 to 1946. His influence, direction, character, and management during the early years contributed greatly to the success of the Corps. In the early 40s, a building, or as some members refer to it, a barn in the back of the Elks Lodge on Main Street, served as headquarters. During the war in the winter months, the members burnt railroad ties instead of coal for heat to save money to send subscriptions of the Connecticut Fifers and Drummers newspaper to members in the armed forces.
It was so smoky in that building from that heat. It was terrible. I mean, that was a really tough building to do anything with as far as playing. But we managed to stay there a few years, and then eventually we got the White Street School, and then we moved from the Elks Hall up until the White Street School.
In 1942, the Corps, along with other local corps, performed at the dedication of Rogers Park. Free popsicles were given out to all the children attending. Performances by the Bethel Cadets, Grassy Plain, and the Hatters Drum Corps were enjoyed. Later that year, the Lions Playground, located at Osborne and Hospital Avenue, reopened for the year, with a very large crowd attending and the same corps participating.
We did a lot of community work. I mean, again, going back to the war, we did all of the bond drives, all of the biggie awards that were given to the various factories in this community that did war work. And so we played at many ceremonies in the community for this effort.
4th of July usually meant midget auto races and fireworks at the fairgrounds. A few times, the Corps gave a concert between events. During the war, one of the biggest patriotic events was when the Danbury and Bethel draft contingents formed at Elwood Park by the courthouse after arriving by bus or car. They would then proceed to march up Main Street, down White Street to the train station, where they would board a special train taking them to Fort Devens in Massachusetts. Led by the Corps, the contingent was roundly cheered by large crowds along the thoroughfare. But in many instances, freely flowing tears were evident. Younger members were kept busy during these years by helping out on many scrap drives, and a young Don Melillo organized sport activities to keep their interests going when not marching.
Well, of course, during those years, the young people, in order to keep the corps active and everything else, we had a baseball team, we had a football team, we played basketball. We also, of course, besides being in the barn and back of the Elks, chopping railroad ties and going to other places of rehearsal, the competition was a big thing with the young kids. And so we went to many competitions through the year. We didn't have that many parades because of the war years. There wasn't too many volunteer firemen parades, and so everything was a little bit different than it is today.
In 1944, during World War II, Corps members not eligible for service in the armed forces combined with the Greenwich American Legion Drum Corps to form the 8th Infantry Connecticut State Guard Band in Niantic, Connecticut. During World War II, the Corps had 68 members that served in the armed forces. 2 members paid the supreme sacrifice. PFC Santo Magazi and PFC Vernon Rydell both lost their lives in the Philippine Islands in 1945. In 1946, 58 members of the Corps recently discharged from the services attended a welcome home meeting at the new American Legion home on Elm Street. Transportation of equipment to competitions and parades around that time was by a trailer pulled by a car. Members went to the functions riding in their own cars or with others. The Corps has led the Connecticut and Danbury American Legion contingent many times in Boston, Philadelphia, and up Fifth Avenue in New York. In the late 40s, a popular occasion in Danbury was the lighting of the Christmas lights on Main Street during Thanksgiving weekend. A crowd in excess of 10,000 usually turned out for the festivities. In 1949, the Corps won the first place prize of $500 in the Lions International Parade held in New York City for the best musical unit. Shown here, receiving the check. In 1951, the Corps participated in the official beginning of Little League Baseball in Danbury. Shown here is the current field at Rogers Park.
I can remember going to the competitions years ago with, we would go the day before, Peter Kreitz and Eddie Sacco, Steve Fainer, the Martha boys, and we'd wind up pitching our tents and being right on the competition field the day before, and when the other corps came, we were already there. Fortunately, we were able to win most of those at that time.
In the early 50s, the Corps rehearsed and had its headquarters at the old White Street School, located near the corner of White and Wildman Streets. The Corps eventually bought this building. In 1955, the building was sold and demolished later for a Grand Union market. Currently, the location looks like this. Property was purchased on Shelter Rock Road, where a new headquarters building was erected. This housed the Corps until 1966, when it was sold. Busy schedules, maintenance, upkeep, and lack of interest contributed to the reasons for selling. The Corps since rents the Catholic War Veterans Hall on Chauvoy Lane. It uses the hall for meetings and rehearsals and has its own quartermaster's room that houses its uniforms and equipment.
Rehearsals are very important because, as you know, if you don't rehearse, you're not going to be good. And we do spend every Wednesday, it's only a couple hours, but it's intense time where we are down there to learn, and we want to make ourselves better. So rehearsals are fun, and they're also a time during the week that we get to see each other and what's going on.
In 1960, The Corps participated in a Volkswagen bus TV commercial that was filmed in a small shopping center in Wilton, Connecticut. The commercial showed the Corps marching, how many members could fit with their instruments into the bus, and finally, how easy it was to back into a parking space. Afterwards, it was learned that the bus actually pulled out of the space, and the film was reversed to show it backing up.